Guadalajara's Akron Stadium is set to host 2 FIFA World Cup playoff matches next month and 4 games during the main tournament in June. But the killing of Mexico's most wanted drug boss, Eleno, has led to a wave of violence in the city and surrounding areas. It puts people at risk, both those who live here and those who come from abroad. So, it will be good for the government to handle it. There is absolutely no intention by FIFA to withdraw any host city from Mexico. The 3 host cities remain, and actually next Saturday at the Akron Stadium, FIFA will present the World Cup trophy when it visits the city. Mexico has invested billions of dollars in this World Cup, which it's co-hosting with the United States and Canada. It will stage 10 games in 3 cities, Guadalajara, Monterrey, and Mexico City, where the first game will be played on June the 11th. FIFA say they have confidence in the country's ability to host a safe tournament. Confían total and Mexico and Shine and Lasades. FIFA president just stood in front of the world and claimed that Mexico is 100% safe for the 2026 World Cup. He used words like complete confidence without a hint of hesitation or doubt. And the Mexican president backed him up by saying there was absolutely no risk. But then something happened that exposed the entire lie when the military killed Eleno, who was the most wanted drug lord in the country. What followed was total chaos as burned cars and roadblocks appeared everywhere, leaving 70 people dead in just a few days. Now, we are hearing that Cristiano Ronaldo won't even commit to showing up because Portuguese Football Federation is actually looking at the facts on the ground instead of just swallowing FIFA's corporate PR. If Ronaldo decides to pull out, the entire 2026 World Cup is going to fall apart. So, let's look at what is actually happening behind the scenes. FIFA's safe narrative versus the ground reality. Gianni Infantino stood right in front of the cameras and told everyone that he has complete confidence in Mexico and its president, Claudia Sheinbaum. He promised that everything would go as smoothly as possible. And FIFA's official position is that they have no intention of pulling out of any host cities. They are sticking with Guadalajara, Monterrey, and Mexico City because that is the narrative they are selling to the world. The problem is that the moment Eleno died this past Sunday, that entire story collapsed under the weight of reality. Cartel members didn't just take the loss quietly, and they started burning cars across multiple states while setting up roadblocks to paralyze the region. They created a wave of violence so intense that the authorities stopped counting after 70 people were killed, proving this wasn't just some small incident in one town. Guadalajara is one of the 3 host cities for the World Cup, but it also happens to be the home base for the Jalisco New Generation cartel, because this was Eleno's organization. The violence hit that city the hardest, and local residents are now saying the exact thing that FIFA refuses to admit. People on the street are telling reporters that the area is very insecure right now, which is a far cry from the smoothly as possible line we heard from the top. FIFA decided to double down on their claims with Infantino saying that Mexico is a great country and that bad things happen everywhere because we don't live on the moon. That might be true in a literal sense, but most people don't try to host the biggest sporting event on the planet in the middle of a war zone. He talked about how the police will guarantee order and security, but you can't really guarantee anything when cartel violence is this unpredictable. Mexico has already poured billions of dollars into these stadiums and new infrastructure. So FIFA is doing everything they can to protect that investment by ignoring what is happening. They are making promises they can't keep while people are actually dying in the streets. And that massive gap between the PR and the reality is about to be exposed by Cristiano Ronaldo. Portugal's security review and the Ronaldo question. Portuguese Football Federation isn't just swallowing the complete confidence line that FIFA is trying to sell everyone right now. They put out a statement saying they are closely monitoring the situation on the ground in Mexico, which is really just a polite way of saying they are running their own investigation. Instead of blindly trusting FIFA's guarantees, the Portuguese officials are looking at the raw facts for themselves to see if the environment is actually safe. The schedule has Portugal playing Mexico at the Azteca Stadium on March 28th. And while that's technically just a friendly, it has become a massive test case for the entire sport. This is the moment where we find out if international teams are actually willing to put their players on a plane to Mexico, given the current climate. Portugal knows exactly what kind of pressure they are applying by putting this specific match under a formal security review. The Federation made it clear that the safety of their players, the coaching staff, and the traveling supporters comes before anything else on the calendar. They aren't worried about FIFA's timeline or protecting the reputation of the upcoming tournament because their only real priority is making sure everyone comes home in one piece. While they are talking to the Mexican government and local football authorities, they still haven't confirmed if they're actually showing up, and that hesitation is doing more damage to FIFA's credibility than any official protest ever could. We have to talk about why this is such a nightmare for the organizers. And it really comes down to the fact that Cristiano Ronaldo is the biggest name in the history of the game. He is the global face of football. So if Portugal decides it's too dangerous for their squad to land in Mexico this March, the message to the rest of the world is going to be devastating. It tells every other country that even with the Mexican government backing the event, the risk is still high enough to keep the most famous athlete on the planet at home. Ronaldo being there or staying home is the ultimate signal that every other nation is waiting for before they commit their own stars to the trip. If Portugal pulls out or asks for a postponement, you can bet Jamaica will be looking at that decision while they weigh the risks of their own matches in Guadalajara. Colombia and other nations will likely use that same logic, arguing that if a major European power doesn't feel safe, they shouldn't be expected to gamble with their players' lives either. This one decision by Portugal creates a massive domino effect that FIFA simply cannot control with a press release. The Federation is still holding out on a final call, but the mere fact that they are performing an independent analysis tells you everything you need to know about the current state of affairs. They aren't accepting corporate assurances from an organization that makes billions of dollars by keeping the tournament on schedule. And they are taking the security threats seriously enough that Ronaldo's participation is a genuine question mark. Mexico's coach, Javier Aguirre, tried his best to downplay the drama by saying it's normal for Portugal to check on conditions, and he told reporters he's confident the match will go on as planned. But at the end of the day, his confidence doesn't move the needle because Portugal is the one holding all the cards here. Right now, the Portuguese Federation is clearly not convinced that the situation is under control, and their silence is speaking volumes. The domino effect and why this matters for the 2026 World Cup. If Portugal decides to boycott or move their March match, it sets a precedent that FIFA won't be able to ignore or sweep under the rug. It proves to the world that safety concerns in the region are legitimate and that even the biggest football nations will put player protection ahead of a commercial schedule. Once that door is opened, you can expect a line of other countries to follow Portugal's lead and start questioning their own travel plans. Just think about how this falls apart for the organizers, starting with Jamaica having a World Cup playoff semi-final in Guadalajara just 2 days before the Portugal match. If the Portuguese Federation says the situation is too risky for their stars, the Jamaican Federation is going to face immediate pressure from their own fans and players to pull the plug too. There is no world where you send your team into a city that a European powerhouse just deemed a no-go zone, and Colombia will be watching that outcome just as closely before they head to Mexico City. Mexico has already poured billions of dollars into hosting this tournament by building new stadiums and upgrading the infrastructure across 3 major cities. A total collapse of these scheduled matches would be a financial catastrophe for their economy, but that isn't a problem that the players or the visiting teams are responsible for solving. FIFA's job is supposed to be protecting the integrity of the sport, not propping up Mexico's real estate investments by pretending the security situation is better than the headlines suggest. Gianni Infantino is in a corner because he cannot afford to have the world's biggest star refugees to show up for a sanctioned event. The optics of that would be a total disaster, suggesting that FIFA cared more about the TV schedule than the actual lives of the people playing the game. If the most famous athlete on earth says it isn't safe, and FIFA tries to force the issue anyway, They are looking at a PR nightmare that will haunt the 2026 World Cup forever. Canada and the United States are also watching this mess unfold with a lot of anxiety since they are co-hosting the entire tournament alongside Mexico. If the Mexican portion of the bracket becomes unreliable or matches have to be moved because of violence, all that pressure and logistical chaos shifts directly onto the North American venues. Mexico's instability is quickly becoming everyone's problem, and the tournament's overall credibility is now hanging by a thread. At the end of the day, FIFA's claims of complete confidence are just corporate talking points that don't reflect the reality of what's happening on the ground. The real moment of truth arrives in March when Portugal makes their final decision on whether to board that plane or stay home. This isn't just about one friendly match in an old stadium. It's about whether the 2026 World Cup is a viable event or just a FIFA fantasy that is finally crashing into a very dangerous reality. Portugal's big decision this March is going to show us if the 2026 World Cup is actually safe or just some fantasy FIFA cooked up. If Ronaldo isn't there, the whole tournament collapses. So, hit subscribe to stay updated because the fate of the World Cup depends on what happens next month.